Now we will move on to our next presentation. So branching out and putting down roots, embedding practice across health and care in Scotland. Presentation by Fraser Gilmore, Executive Director and Head of Care Opinion Scotland since 2020. Fraser leads the organisation's work with the Scottish Government, all of the territorial and special health boards and the Health and Social Care Partnership, as well as education and research in Scotland. And prior to coming to Care Opinion UK, Fraser worked in senior roles in the voluntary and statutory sectors for over 15 years, working with homeless people, disabled people, older people, members of the armed forces community all over Scotland. And throughout his career, Fraser has been passionate about empowering people's voices to affect positive change on the things that impact on their lives. Today, Fraser will share with us the experience of greater use of the Care Opinion platform, including members of the public, and importantly, for partnership staff and NHS boards. Welcome, Fraser. Take it away.
Thanks very much, Tina. Let me just try and share my presentation. Let's hope this works. Right, hopefully you can see that okay. So as Tina says, my name is Fraser Gilmore and I'm one of the executive directors at Care Opinion and the head of Scotland. So in today's presentation, which I've titled Branching Out and Putting Down Roots, Embedding Practice Across Health and Social Care in Scotland, I'm going to be sharing our journey in Scotland as one of only 2 nations who've taken a system-wide approach to using Care Opinion. I plan on taking you briefly through how health and care work in Scotland, how we've supported the various health and care services across the nation to embed our model of feedback into their practice, what we're learning from this engagement, and hopefully exploring what the next step on the journey is. So firstly, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about our team in Scotland and more widely in the UK. In our Stirling office, we've got a team of 7 who support all of our healthcare organisations in Scotland. However, this is part of a larger team, the rest of whom are based with James in our Sheffield office, who support our English, Northern Irish and international work. Overall, we're a team of around 22 people. We describe it as 2 locations, but 1 team, as we all work very closely together and lots of our work and support streams intertwine. I tell you this because a lot of people have this concept or idea that we're a massive corporation, but no, we are a small band of people who run a social enterprise and believe that people's voice and experience can be transformational to healthcare. So secondly, I thought it important to put some of this in context. Scotland is a country of about 5.5 million people. We've got 8 cities, more than 50 towns, around 7,000 villages, and around 70% of the population lives in the thinnest part of the country, around and between Glasgow and Edinburgh. So the problem for healthcare is that we have some very urban areas and some incredibly rural areas. To give you an idea, the Shetland Isles in Scotland are closer to Norway than they are to Edinburgh. Health and care in Scotland is provided by 14 territorial health boards who deal with acute care, 31 health and social care partnerships who deal with a variety of secondary community health, as well as social work, social care, care homes, day services, and other forms of social community services. And the health and social care partnerships also commission a variety of third sector, not-for-profit and independent sector organisations who provide some of the care services as well. We also have special health boards who provide services like healthcare over the phone and online, the ambulance service and the air ambulance service. So that's healthcare briefly in Scotland in a nutshell. And as I noted earlier, Scotland is one of only 2 nations who take a system-wide approach to Care Opinion. And this is enabled by the national subscription provided to all of the territorial and special health boards by the Scottish Government, who also use Care Opinion stories in their various health directorates and departments. So as well as all of the service providing health boards in Scotland encouraging and responding to feedback, we also have NHS Education Scotland, Healthcare Improvement Scotland, and National Services Scotland, utilising Care Opinion 2. Unlike the health boards, the health and social care partnerships are responsible for their own subscriptions to Care Opinion, and we currently work with 12 of the 31, and this number is growing all the time. In Scotland, we've also built up relationships with many local and national third sector organisations, utilising Care Opinion in a variety of ways. And regulators, as well as the ones mentioned in health, like the Care Commission, also utilise Care Opinion. But these organisations don't represent everyone using Care Opinion in Scotland, and the why and the how does vary massively. So for staff and services, they use Care Opinion as an opportunity to read and respond to feedback from the public, to take on board this feedback, learn and change from it as a result. For civil servants and policymakers, they use it to help benchmark, inform policy and strategy, service design and future policy at local and national levels. We have lots of politicians in Scotland listed on Care Opinion, or members of the Scottish Parliament, and they use Care Opinion to keep informed about what their local constituents are saying about their local and national services. For researchers and educators, they use it as a teaching tool for future and current health and care staff, and to conduct research on the Care Opinion model and what people are saying about services. For third and independent sector organisations, they use it also as an opportunity to read and respond to feedback from the public as service providers, but also to use the voice of the public to inform their areas of work. And lastly, but most importantly, the public, who share their stories about their healthcare experiences because they want to give credit where it's due and make suggestions for improvement, as well as to read and learn from the experience of other members of the public. So, although Care Opinion's been around in the UK since 2005, the journey in Scotland started in 2011, where the Care Opinion model was tested with a variety of health boards with seed funding from the Scottish Government. More funding was allocated in 2013, with full funding being granted in 2014. Since then, we've been granted funding from the Scottish Government to provide our service to all of the territorial health boards. As often happens in government, legislative changes happen, and in 2014 there was a seismic change with the introduction of the Public Bodies Joint Working Scotland Act in 2014. This legislation was created to integrate health and social care in order to improve outcomes for patients, service users, carers and their families. And the Act required that health boards and local authorities work together effectively to agree a model of integration to deliver quality, sustainable care services. They did this by creating the 31 health and social care partnerships across the country, which meant a new way for us to be approaching our work as services were being delivered in a slightly different way. But with this new approach came new opportunities. The integration agenda meant that there was a real focus on the full health and care pathway for patients and service users through services, and Care Opinion was able to adapt to enable the public to share their experiences in this way. So from then until now, we've supported around 39,000 members of the public to share their stories on Care Opinion about services provided by health boards, health and social care partnerships, and third and independent sector organisations. And with this increased work across the nation, this number is increasing rapidly. And to give you an idea of this, in 21 and 22, 4,696 members of the public shared their stories about just health boards. In 22 and 23, it was 6,455. And this financial year already, more than 5,000 people have shared their stories, with 5 months still left to go of the financial year. So you can see why for our 22-23 annual review of stories about NHS Scotland services and for this presentation, our theme was branching out and putting that down roots, which reflects the story of Care Opinion in Scotland currently. In 22-23, we reached the milestone of 30,000 stories shared by members of the public on Care Opinion. And to help us celebrate this, National Clinical Director Jason Leach, who's also a friend of Care Opinion Australia, left us this quote, which was, "The experience of patients, families and carers is crucial to the staff of the health and care service. Care Opinion has unlocked these experiences and brought them to light to allow celebration and improvement. It's been the most important person-centred change of the last few years." On the slide, you can also see some stats from 22 and 23, which starts to paint a picture of how care opinion is being used in Scotland. 6,455 stories shared shows the increased number of stories shared by the public. This increase comes from the increased engagement from the boards, how they're increasing their communication around feedback, how they're thinking about patients and how they want to be communicated with, how and when they're asking for feedback. But importantly, the fear of feedback is dissipating as many people become used to it and it starts to become part of their daily practice. Sometimes the fear of feedback comes from the idea that the majority of feedback received will be negative. And as you can see during this year, on average, 73% of the feedback was completely positive, with the remainder having some level of criticality. This number, as all of them are, is an average, as there are differences in region, location, and clinical function. What this number does tell you, and as we know from experience, the better services promote storytelling on care opinion, the wider the audience. And the wider the audience, the more likely you are to capture a wider variety of views, even those people who would not usually give feedback. It also gives services the opportunity to celebrate what they've done well and reinforce practices, while learning from what has not gone well for people and using that feedback to develop and change. The number of staff listening to and responding to stories in Scotland is also increasing all of the time. In 22-23, there were 3,460 members of staff listening to and responding to stories across the country from health boards. And it looks like this number might hit 4,000 by the end of 23-24. This increase and depth is also a reflection in services being listed on the platform. We're not just seeing clinical functions, but sub-services who are keen to get feedback specifically for this area of practice. And to give you an example that we really like from this year, we recently listed medical tattooing, which was part of the breast cancer service, where previously breast cancer was a standalone service. This means that more staff are listening to and respond to stories, and responses more and more are coming from as close to the care as possible, where it can make the most difference. We've also seen increases in responses. As you can see, the story shared received a much higher number of responses than the stories themselves. And this shows multiple responses to stories. And in Scotland, we find this really exciting. Every author on care opinion has the ability to share any part of their healthcare journey. This can be to talk about one particular member of staff, all the way to calling an ambulance, being taken to A&E, being admitted to a ward, being discharged home, and receiving care in the community. In this latter case, all services can be tagged and all can respond to their particular part of the story. And the NHS and other services are able to hear from the person about their full care pathway experience. As part of this, the response rate in Scotland is very high as compared to other parts of the UK. And I do think this has a lot to do with the national buy-in to this model and the number of staff and teams that have access to care opinion and have responsibility for it. This is also reflective of the buy-in from staff, civil servants, policymakers, researchers, educators, the third sector, and of course, members of the public, with the increasing readership of care opinion stories. And as you can see from 22-23, almost 1 million reads of these stories. In 22 and 23, we asked some of the boards we work with for their reflections on the year in terms of their use and engagement with care opinion. And I wanted to share one of these reflections with you. This came from Nicole McAnally, who is the project manager of the Patient Experience and Public Involvement team at NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde, which is the biggest health board in the country. Listening to our patients, their families and carers, and hearing about their experience of care is extremely important to NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde. Care opinion provides us with the opportunity to gather real-time feedback and open a two-way dialogue. Person-centred care can only be delivered by listening to patients and carers and finding out what matters to them. The feedback we receive helps us to capture what matters to our patients and their families, identify themes for improvement, as well as celebrating what works well, providing the opportunity to acknowledge the great care provided by our staff. We continue to raise awareness of care opinion among our staff, patients, carers, and their families, as one of the main mechanisms for people to share their experiences about the care that is received and how we deliver our services. We increasingly use social media to raise the profile of care opinion, sharing people's stories during a number of awareness days, such as International Nurses Day, Midwives Day, and Carers Week, alongside more regular promotion with our hashtag Feedback Friday and our hashtag Tell Us Tuesday campaigns. On a weekly basis, we include positive feedback via our Chief Exec's brief and also include regular articles in our staff newsletter. We've also developed a new care opinion webpage for staff. Going forward, we plan to develop our approach to demonstrating how we learn from the feedback we receive and the improvements flowing from this. This includes empowering and encouraging staff to act upon feedback, to influence change in practice, record the actions taken as a result of the feedback, and close the loop on care opinion, thus demonstrating to those sharing their experiences and the wider public how feedback has really made a difference. So in these two quotes on screen, they're reflective of the messaging we hear from health and care services all over Scotland, as they further embed care opinion into their everyday practice. And as you can imagine, because of the diverse geography, demographics, population density, and different stage every healthcare organisation in Scotland is on in terms of their feedback journey, there are differences in practice and levels of engagement. However, there are some powerful themes that health and care organisations across Scotland report in terms of their use of care opinion. They report increases in staff morale, and this empowers staff to seek more feedback about their practice and service. It supports staff, teams, and services to really think about and reinforce practice that the public reports as positive. As staff and services' inclination to defensiveness reduces, they are more open to consider service improvement and change based on the feedback they're receiving. This move towards openness and transparency has a positive impact on staff, team, and service culture, which benefits staff, patients, and carers alike. We've started to see health and care organisations consider more how they listen, act upon, report, and share feedback and the changes that come from this at every level of organisations. From social media campaigns to corporate reporting, from feedback boards and wards to stories being used to influence practice, policy, and strategy at ward, sector, hospital, and board levels. We're seeing how all of these organisations are considering how feedback on care opinion is integrated with other forms of feedback and complaints processes. And in many cases, care opinion is being used and encouraged as their main avenue for feedback. But importantly, across the nation, we're seeing an appetite and a want to do more. As care opinion in Scotland is supported by the Scottish Government, this also means that care opinion can and is being used, not just as an information source, but as an intervention into systems, processes, policy, and strategy at a national level. Some recent work that we've been involved with national teams has included working with the National Cancer Policy Team. We helped them see what the public shared about cancer services, help them to continue to track what people were saying, help them consider how to increase story numbers from people using cancer services. And these stories were used as a part of a larger programme in the creation of the Cancer Strategy for Scotland 23 to 33. Working with the National Realistic Medicine team, we're helping them understand what patients are saying in terms of shared decision-making, personalised approaches to care, reducing harm and waste, reducing unwarranted variation, managing risk better, and innovation. Using our API access keys, Healthcare Improvement Scotland have created their own national dashboard of the stories coming into care opinion, so they can analyse what patients are saying using their own metrics. With a value-based health and care team, we recently supported the creation of a national e-learning tool for health and social care staff around outcomes and experiences that matter to people. These are just some recent examples, but interesting stories the public are sharing on care opinion at a national policy and strategy level continues to grow. And at the start of this month, we were also delighted to co-host our very first policy and strategy summit called What is the Value of Online Feedback to Healthcare Policy and Strategy, which was done in conjunction with the Public Health Agency in Northern Ireland and the Scottish Government. This started a really valuable conversation between two areas taking a system-wide approach to online feedback. And it was, I hope, the first of many conversations and collaborations to come. And I'm just going to touch on research and education for my final part here, as I know that James will be talking about this later, but I feel it's important to mention it as part of Scotland's journey, as the intersection between service delivery, policy and strategy, education and research is an important one. We've had some great research come from Scottish academics on the care opinion model and using care opinion stories. As James already mentioned, Fadila Manzandarani, her paper Caring for Care from the University of Edinburgh, to Ellen Stewart's book, Why Britain Loves the NHS from the University of Strathclyde, to Emma Berry's Using Humanity to Change Systems from the University of Aberdeen, who we're very happy to say has just completed her PhD that talks about care opinion and the NHS in Scotland. There has been more, and I hope there will be more in the future, because research and the academics lens adds another layer to our understanding of why people post feedback online and how this feedback can be used to improve services. And in terms of education, I've already talked about the work with value-based health and care, but we also support aspiring medics of St Andrews University with placements at Care Opinion, and we are currently working with students of the University of Stirling. Again, this is another area of work we look to increase our presence in, as we know it's important to embed an open and transparent and person-centred approach to health and care staff, whether they're still in training or they're already working. So where next? Although in terms of a system-wide approach, care opinion in Scotland is the most mature in terms of its progress, there is still much more that can be achieved. We're seeing great depth in services and number of stories that's increasing all the time, but we will work with services to continue that journey. We'll continue to work with the Scottish Government and partners to explore the policy and strategy implications of online feedback and how we can further embed this into practice. We'll continue our support of cross-system learning between countries of the UK and further afield, further support research and education opportunities, but importantly, we will continue to provide a safe place where people can provide their feedback so healthcare services can develop, learn and change as a result. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fraser. That was fantastic. I think we have a couple of questions sorry, we've got a few questions here in the chat for you. Let me just pull that up for you. Hang on one second. So Tanya was asking, and I know you spoke about some of your strategies that you've been using with social media and campaigns and others. I know Sarah and my eyes lit up when we heard Tell Us Tuesday. I absolutely love that, and we'll be looking to beg and borrow that. But how do services in Scotland encourage the use of care opinion?
Oh, that's a very big question. There's a lot of different ways, and we try and support people to really think about their patients, families, and carers, and what their needs are. As we recognise the age group is really varied, and people's access to the internet, for example, is very varied. So we get them to think about who their users are and how they want to communicate with them. So in Scotland, we have lots of poster campaigns. We have campaigns where people are giving out postcards. They're giving out credit cards. We have screens up in hospitals that have the care opinion slideshow. We have people that create boards on wards where they print out feedback and that have care opinion information. People use emails, they use lots of invitation links, they use QR codes. I recently, if you looked on the internet yesterday, I was doing an interview on one of the hospital radio stations. There are so many ways, but it's about finding what works best for the public in your local area. And more we're seeing the use of social media. So not just to promote care opinion, but to celebrate the stories that they're getting in. And we help them with that celebration on Twitter, on Facebook. We're starting to be cool and young now and use the Instagram. I'm not quite ready for TikTok yet. I'm imagining me doing little TikTok dances, but there is a lot. There is a whole variety. And something we're actually starting to do is create peer support groups between the health organisations so they can learn from each other as well. We recognise that the more rural areas are going to be able to support each other, and also the more urban areas, but there is so much that they can learn from each other. So we've already had our first peer support meeting with health boards, and we're going to be doing that with the health and social care partnerships as well soon. But if anyone wants to contact me in Scotland, we've got lots of examples we can give you.
That's beautiful. Thanks for that, Fraser. There's certainly lots of different ways that we can bring people into the platform. I've got another question there from the West in terms of asking. Claire has got a question. Are Scottish Health Services provided with any additional resources in order to be able to deal with care opinion stories? And she's got a double whammy there. And has there been any change in attitudes or approach from health service staff to care opinion since COVID and the increased pressure on health services?
Yeah, so the first one, it's really interesting because we are always encouraging people to recognize that care opinion doesn't just happen. You've got to work on it. And I think early on, maybe naively, they didn't really realize how much you needed to put into it. Just like any system is a system, and it's a system of change. So you need to back that up with staff time. And we see a massive variation in that across Scotland, sometimes based on the size of health boards. With the health and social care partnerships, again, there's a massive variety there. We've even seen one of our partnerships in Perth and Kinross hiring someone full time just to do care opinion. So I think people do have to recognise that. The subscription to care opinion isn't the expensive part. It's the staff time that's the expensive part. But the more people work on care opinion, the more they realise how worth it is. Obviously, and how much cheaper than if they were to do it themselves. So yeah, I don't think people realise that part. But there's certainly a lot now, because we have been around for a long time, where systems have been built up are in place now. Some better than others. But again, through peer support, we're trying to teach each other a lot. And I think the one of the most important things are the internal reporting processes. So making sure that it's not just the services themselves who read the story. Who else reads that story? Who else might respond to that story? Who else is it important that sees that story for not just learning and change there, but further out within the hospital and more widely within the board? How are policy areas linked in? So it's just not the team that are dealing with care opinion. There are a variety of teams using care opinion in a lot of different ways. What was the I've forgot the second part of that question.
Me too. Let me just get down.
It was to ask if you've
post-COVID.
seen any change post-COVID with the additional pressure that there are on health service providers in terms of service delivery and workforce challenges. Has there been any change? I mean, it's so wonderful to hear the level of enthusiasm from people about care opinion, but I also do understand that resource issue has intensified a little bit here. I'm imagining it's the same in Scotland. I just wondered if there'd been any change in approach.
Is that a Falkirk accent I hear?
It is.
Oh, wonderful! There we go. Well, interestingly, Falkirk was our latest health and social care partnership that joined us on the care opinion journey. Yes, things did change. So I interestingly started my role 2 weeks into the first lockdown, which was quite fun. But yeah, I think if you look at our numbers from that year in terms of the numbers shared, the numbers actually went down. However, engagement did actually go up, because people recognized that some of the different forms of engagement that they would usually do, that would be face to face, they couldn't do, and they couldn't do for a long time. So during COVID, we actually saw a bit of an uptake. We saw more and more of the health and social care partnerships who were considering a full subscription to care opinion actually speeding that process up a little bit more. And people were thinking more creatively about how they were doing things. People were using QR codes more. They were using invitation links more, because they couldn't use posters. They couldn't use leaflets. So they had to really rethink how they were doing it. So I think that COVID actually it gave Care Opinion a bit of a boost, because people were having to think about how they communicate with people differently. And now that I don't know if you can talk about us being at the end of it, we're in a different world now, but we're seeing more of that integration with online, and people are coming back to, for example, using volunteers to take feedback, but they're linking that back into Care Opinion again, because they will speak to volunteers to say, well, if people need support to tell their story about Care Opinion, rather than just taking that feedback, actually helping them to use Care Opinion.
Thanks, Fraser. That's an awesome cover and response to our questions today, and I really appreciate that. I'm conscious of time and think we should move to our next session, but if we don't get to any of the questions today, please don't be concerned. We will address that through follow-up after the fact. So I'm going to hand back now to Dr. Tina Janamian to introduce our next session.
Well, thank you so much, Alicia, and thank you again, Fraser, for your presentation, the excellent real-life examples that you've shared with us and showing us what is really possible at that larger scale. And it's absolutely mind-blowing to see what can be achieved with perseverance, commitment, and the right resources over time. And the return on investment is really beautiful. It's certainly our vision to see that the Care Opinion platform is used more widely across so that all consumers and all families, carers, and health services have the ability to have this relational feedback moving forward. And the Care Opinion team's working really hard with state government, with consumer groups, many leaders across various sectors to ensure that not only across health, but community sector, aged care sector, disability sector, social services, human services, etc., that all consumers navigating the care system have the opportunity to share their resources to support the quality improvement journey, patient safety, workforce morale, and much, much more. So what a wonderful first session we've had, and it's really helped us raise the gaze of what the possibilities are. Thank you again to the outstanding presenters.